Hello, hello. Welcome to another Tuesday reading stream. Of course, I will be finishing chapter one of COVID-19, The Great Reset. Now, all I have left now is 1.6 technological reset. So, I will just get this started. Yeah. When it was published in 2016, the Fourth Industrial Revolution made the case that technology and digitization will revolutionize everything, making the overused and often ill-used adage, "this time is different," apt. Simply put, major technological innovations are on the brink of fueling momentous change throughout the world. In the 4 short years since, technological progress has moved impressively fast. AI is now all around us. From drones and voice recognition to virtual assistants and translation software, are now starting to be used in war. Our mobile devices have become a permanent and integral part of our personal and professional lives, helping us on many different fronts, anticipating our needs, listening to us, and locating us, even when not asked to do so. Automation and robots. Mhm. That again. Is this better? Is this better? Good. Not better? Can you hear me properly at least? I wonder if it's the sound of the fan of the laptop. That might be it. Um, the laptop's the fan is raging right now. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Automation and robots are reconfiguring the way businesses operate with staggering speed and returns on scales on scale inconceivable just a few years ago. Innovation in genetics, with synthetic biology now on the horizon, is also exciting, paving the way for developments in healthcare that are groundbreaking. Biotechnology still falls short of stopping let alone preventing a disease outbreak. But recent innovations have allowed the identification and sequencing of the coronavirus genome much faster than in the past, as well as the elaboration of more effective diagnostics. In addition, the most recent biotechnology techniques using RNA and DNA platforms make it possible to develop vaccines faster than ever. They might also help with the development of new bioengineered treatments. To sum up, the speed and breadth of the fourth industrial revolution have been and continue to be remarkable. This chapter argues that the pandemic will accelerate innovation even more, catalyzing technological changes already underway, comparable to the exacerbation effect it has had on other underlying global and domestic issues, and turbocharging any digital business or the digital dimension of any business. It will also accentuate one of the greatest societal and individual challenges posed by tech: privacy. We will see how contact tracing has an unequal capacity and a quasi-essential place in the armory needed to combat COVID-19, while at the same time being positioned to become an enabler of mass surveillance. Accelerating digital transformation. With the pandemic, the digital transformation that so many analysts have been referring to for years without being exactly sure what it meant has found its catalyst. One major effect of confinement will be the expansion and progression of the digital world in a decisive and often permanent manner. This is noticeable not only in its most mundane and anecdotal aspects, more online conversations, more streaming campaign, more digital content in general, but also in terms of forcing more profound changes in how companies operate, something that is explored in more depth in the next chapter. In April 2020, several tech leaders observed how quickly and radically the necessities created by the health crisis have precipitated the adoption of a wide range of technology. In the space of just 1 month, it appeared that many companies, in terms of tech take-up, fast-forwarded by several years. For the digitally savvy, this meant good things, while for the others, a very poor outlook, sometimes catastrophically so. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, observed that social and physical distancing requirements created a remote everything, bringing forward the adoption of a wide range of technologies by 2 years, while Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO, marveled at the impressive leap in digital activity, forecasting a significant and lasting effect on sectors as different as online work, education, shopping, medicine, and entertainment. The consumer. During the lockdowns, many consumers previously reluctant to rely too heavily on digital applications and services were forced to change their habits almost overnight. Watching movies online instead of going to the cinema, having meals delivered instead of going out to restaurants, talking to friends remotely instead of meeting them in the flesh, talking to colleagues on a screen instead of chit-chatting at the coffee machine, exercising online instead of going to the gym, and so on. Thus, almost instantly, most things became e-things. E-learning, e-commerce, e-gambling, e-books, e-attendance. Some of the old habits will certainly return. The joy and pleasure of personal contact can't be matched. We are social animals after all. But many of the tech behaviors that we were forced to adopt during confinement will, through familiarity, become more natural. As social and physical distancing persists, relying more on digital platforms to communicate, or work, or seek advice, or order something will, little by little, gain ground on formerly ingrained habits. In addition, the pros and cons of online versus offline will be under constant scrutiny through a variety of lenses. If health considerations become paramount, we may decide, for example, that a cycling class in front of a screen at home doesn't match the conviviality and fun of doing it with a group in a live class, but is in fact safer and cheaper. The same reasoning applies to many different domains like flying to a meeting. Zoom is safer, cheaper, greener, and much more convenient. Driving to a distant family gathering for the weekend, the WhatsApp family group is not as fun, but again, safer, cheaper, and greener. Or even attending an academic course, not as fulfilling, but cheaper and more convenient. The regulator. This transition towards more digital of everything in our professional and personal lives will also be supported and accelerated by regulating. To date, governments have often slowed the pace of adoption of new technologies by lengthy ponderings about what the best regulatory framework could look like. But, as the example of telemedicine and drone delivery is now showing, a dramatic acceleration forced by necessity is possible. During the lockdowns, a quasi-global relaxation of regulations that had previously hampered progress in domains where the technology had been available for years suddenly happened because there was no better or other choice available. What was until recently unthinkable suddenly became possible, and we can be certain that neither those patients who experienced how easy and convenient telemedicine was, nor the regulators who made it possible, will want to see it go in reverse. New regulations will stay in place. In the same vein, a similar story is unfolding in the US with the Federal Aviation Authorities, but also in other countries related to fast-tracking regulation pertaining to drone delivery. The current imperative to propel, no matter what, the contactless economy and the subsequent willingness of regulators to speed it up means that there are no holds barred. What is true for until recently sensitive domains like telemedicine and drone delivery is also true for more mundane and well-covered regulatory fields like mobile payments. Just to provide a banal example, in the midst of the lockdown in April 2020, European banking regulators decided to increase the amount that shoppers could pay using their mobile devices, while also reducing the authentication requirements that made it previously difficult to make payments using platforms like PayPal or Venmo. Such moves will only accelerate the digital prevalence in our daily lives, albeit not without contingent cybersecurity effects. The third, in one form or another, social and physical distancing measures are likely to persist after the pandemic itself subsides, justifying the decision of many companies from different industries to accelerate automation. After a while, the enduring concerns about technological unemployment will recede as societies emphasize the need to restructure the workplace in a way that minimizes close human contact. Indeed, automation technologies are particularly well suited to a world in which human beings can't get too close to each other or are willing to reduce their interactions. Our lingering and possibly lasting fear of being infected with a virus, COVID-19 or another, will thus speed the relentless march of automation, particularly in the fields most susceptible to it. In 2016, two academics from Oxford University came to the conclusion that up to 86% of jobs in restaurants, 75% of jobs in retail, and 59% of jobs in entertainment could be automatized by 2035. These three industries are among those the hardest hit by the pandemic, and in which automating the breathing of hygiene and cleanliness will be a necessity that in turn will further accelerate the transition towards more tech and more digital. There is an additional phenomenon set to support the expansion of automation, when economic distancing might follow social distance. As countries turn inward and global companies shorten their super efficient but highly fragile supply chains, automation and robots that enable more local production while keeping costs down will be in great demand. The process of automation was set in motion many years ago, but the critical issue once again relates to the accelerating pace of change and transition. The pandemic will fast forward the adoption of automation in the workplace and the introduction of more robots in our personal and professional lives. From the onset of the lockdowns, it became apparent that robots and AI were a natural alternative when human labor was not available. Furthermore, they were used whenever possible to reduce the health risks to human employees. At a time when physical distancing became an obligation, robots were deployed in places as different as warehouses, supermarkets, and hospitals in a broad range of activities, from shelf scanning, an area on which AI had made tremendous forays, to cleaning and, of course, robotic delivery, a soon-to-be important component of healthcare supply chains that will in turn lead to the contactless delivery of groceries and other essentials. As for many other technologies that were on the distant horizon in terms of adoption, like telemedicine, businesses and consumers, and public authorities are now rushing to turbocharge the speed of adoption. In cities as varied as Hangzhou, Washington, D.C., and Tel Aviv, efforts are underway to move from pilot programs to large-scale operations capable of putting an army of delivery robots on the road and in the air. Chinese e-commerce giants like Alibaba and JD.com are confident that in the coming 12 to 18 months, autonomous delivery could become widespread in China, much earlier than anticipated prior to the pandemic. Maximum attention is often focused on industrial robots, as they are the most visible face of automation. But radical acceleration is also coming in workplace automation via software and machine learning. So-called robotic process automation, RPA, makes businesses more efficient by installing computer software that rivals and replaces the actions of a human worker. This can take multiple forms, ranging from Microsoft's finance group consolidating and simplifying disparate reports, tools, and content into automated, role-based, personalized portal, to an oil company installing software that sends pictures of a pipeline to an AI engine, compare the pictures with an existing database, and alert the relevant employees to potential problems. In all cases, RPA helps to reduce the time spent compiling and validating data, and therefore cuts costs at the expense of a likely increase in unemployment, as mentioned in the economic reset bill. During the peak of the pandemic, RPA won its spurs by proving its efficiency at handling surges in volume. Thus, ratified in the post-pandemic era, the process will be rolled out fast track. Two examples prove this point. RPA Solutions helped some hospitals to disseminate COVID-19 test results, saving nurses as much as 3 hours work per day. We can't bring their working day down to like 6 hours, can we? That's asking too much. In a similar vein, an AI digital device normally used to respond to customer requests online was adapted to help medical digital platforms screen patients online for COVID-19. For all these reasons, Bain and Company, a consultancy, estimates that the number of companies implementing this automation of business processes will double over the next 2 years, a timeline that the pandemic may shorten still further. Contact tracing, contact tracking, and surveillance. An important lesson can be learned from the countries that were more effective in dealing with the pandemic, in particular Asian nations. Technology in general, and digital in particular, help. Successful contact tracing proved to be a key component of a successful strategy against COVID-19. While lockdowns are effective at reducing the reproduction rate of the coronavirus, they don't eliminate the threat posed by the pandemic. In addition, they come at injuriously high economic and societal costs. It will be very hard to fight COVID-19 without an effective treatment or a vaccine, and until then, the most effective way to curtail or stop transmission of the virus is by widespread testing, followed by the isolation of cases, contact tracing, and the quarantine of contacts exposed to the people infected. As we will see below, in this process, technology can be a formidable shortcut, allowing public health officials to identify infected people more very rapidly, thus containing an outbreak before it starts to spread. Contact tracing and tracking are therefore essential components of our public health response to COVID-19. Both terms are often used interchangeably, yet they have slightly different meanings. A tracking app gains insights in real time by, for example, determining a person's current location through geodata via GPS coordinates or radio cell location. By contrast, tracing consists in gaining insights in retrospect, like identifying physical contact between people using Bluetooth. Neither offer a miracle solution that can stop in its entirety the spread of the pandemic, but they make it possible to almost immediately sound the alarm, permitting early intervention that's limiting or containing the outbreak, particularly when it occurs in super spreading environments like the community or family gathering. For reasons of convenience and ease of reading, we'll merge the two and we'll use them interchangeably, as articles in the press often do. The most effective form of tracking or tracing is obviously the one powered by technology. It not only allows backtracking all the contact between the user of the mobile phone being in touch, but also tracking the user's real-time movements, which in turn affords the possibility to better enforce a lockdown and to warn other mobile users in the proximity of the carrier that they have been exposed to someone infected. It comes as no surprise that digital tracing can become one of the most sensitive issues in terms of public health, raising acute concerns about privacy around the world. In the early phases of the pandemic, many countries, mostly in East Asia, but also others like Israel, decided to implement digital tracing under different forms. They shifted from the retroactive tracing of chains of past contagion to the real-time tracking of movements in order to confine a person infected by COVID-19 and to enforce subsequent quarantines or partial lockdown. From the outset, China, Hong Kong SAR, and South Korea implemented coercive and intrusive measures of digital tracing. They took the decision to track individuals without their consent through their mobile and credit card data, and even employed video surveillance in South Korea. In addition, some economies required the mandatory wearing of electronic bracelets for travel arrivals and people in quarantine in Hong Kong SAR to alert those individuals susceptible of being affected. Others opted for middle ground solutions where individuals placed in quarantine are equipped with a mobile phone to monitor their location and be publicly identified to their communities. The digital tracing solution most lauded and talked about was the Trace Together app run by Singapore's Ministry of Health. It seems to offer the ideal balance between efficiency and privacy concerns by keeping user data on the phone rather than on a server, and by assigning the login anonymously. The contact detection only works with the latest versions of Bluetooth, an obvious limitation in many less digitally advanced countries where a large percentage of mobiles do not have sufficient Bluetooth capability for effective detection. Bluetooth identifies the user's physical contact with another user of the application accurately within about 2 meters, and if a risk of COVID-19 transmission is incurred, the app will warn the contact, at which point the transmission of stored data to the Ministry of Health becomes mandatory, but the contact's anonymity is maintained. Trace Together is therefore non-intrusive in terms of privacy, and its code, available in open source, makes it usable by any country anywhere in the world, yet privacy advocates object that there are still risks. If the entire population of a country downloaded the application, and if there were a sharp increase in COVID-19 infections, then the app could end up identifying most citizens. Cyber intrusions, issues of trust in the operator of the system, and the timing of data retention pose additional privacy concerns. Other options exist. These are mainly related to the availability of open and verifiable source codes, and to guarantees pertaining to data supervision and the length of conservation. Common standards and norms could be adopted, particularly in the EU. Many citizens fear that the pandemic will force a trade-off between privacy and health. The EU Commissioner for Competition observed, "I think that is a false dilemma, because you can do so many things with technology that are not invasive of your phones." I think that very often, when people say it's only doable one way, it's because they want the data for their own purposes. We have made a set of guidelines, and with member states, we've translated that into a toolbox, so that you can do a voluntary app with decentralized storage with Bluetooth technology. You can use technology to track the virus, but you can still give people the freedom of choice. And in doing that, people trust that your technology is for virus tracking, not for any other purposes. I think it is essential that we show that we really mean it. We say that you should be able to trust technology when you use it, that this is not a start of a new era of surveillance. This is for virus stuff, and this can help us open our society. Again, we want to emphasize that this is a fast-moving, highly volatile situation. The announcement made in April by Apple and Google that they are collaborating to develop an app that health officials can use to reverse engineer the movements and connections of a person affected by the virus points through a possible way out of society's most concerned about data privacy and the fear digital surveillance of other health. The person who carries the mobile will have to voluntarily download the app. Apps will agree to share the data, and the two companies made it clear that their technology would not be provided to public health agencies that do not abide by their privacy guidelines. The voluntary contact tracing apps are a problem. They do preserve the privacy of their users, but are only effective when the level of participation is sufficiently high. a collective action problem that underlies once again the profoundly interconnected nature of modern life beneath the individualist facade of rights and contractual obligations. No voluntary contact tracing app will work if people are unwilling to provide their own personal data to the governmental agency that monitors. If if any individual refuses to download the app and therefore withhold information about a possible infection, nuisance, contact, everyone will be adversely affected. In the end, citizens will only use the app if they regard it as trustworthy, which is self-dependent upon trust in the government, public authority. At the end of June 2020, the experience with tracing apps recent hits. Fewer than 30 countries put them in place. In Europe, some countries like Germany and Italy rolled out apps based on a system developed by Apple and Google, while other countries, like France, decided to develop their own app, raising issues of interoperability. In general, technical problems and concerns with privacy seem to affect the app's use and rate of adoption. Just to offer some examples, the UK, following technical glitches and criticism from privacy activists, made a huge difference and decided to replace the domestically developed contact tracing app with the model offered by Apple and Google. Norway suspended the use of its app due to privacy concerns while in France, just 3 weeks after being launched, it stopped COVID app that simply failed to cope up with a very low rate of adoption, 1.9 million people, followed by frequent decisions to launch Norway. Today, about 5.2 billion smartphones exist in the world, each with the potential to help identify who is infected, where, and often by whom. This unprecedented opportunity may explain why different surveys conducted in the US and Europe during their lockdown indicated that a growing number of citizens seem to favor smartphone tracking from public authorities within very specific boundaries. But as always, the devil is in the detail of the policy and its execution. Questions like whether the digital tracking should be mandatory or voluntary, whether the data should be collected on an anonymized or personal basis, and whether the information should be collected privately or publicly disclosed, contain many different shades of black and white, making it exceedingly difficult to agree on a unified model of digital tracing in a collective fashion. All these questions and the unease they can provide were exacerbated by the rise in corporations tracking employees' health that emerged in the early phases of lockdown reopening. They will continuously grow in relevance as the corona pandemic lingers on and fears about other possible pandemics surface. As the coronavirus crisis proceeds and people start returning to the workplace, the corporate move will be towards the rate of surveillance. For better or for worse, companies will be watching, sometimes recording, what their workforce does. The trend could take many different forms, from measuring body temperatures with thermal cameras to monitoring via an app how employees comply with safety. Measuring body temperatures with thermal um, uh, this is bound to raise profound regulatory and privacy issues, which many companies will reject by arguing that unless they increase digital surveillance, they won't be able to reopen and function without risking new infection and being, in some cases, liable. They will cite health and safety as justification for increased surveillance. going to mention that, but it's down below. The perennial concern expressed by legislators, academics, and trade unions is that the surveillance tools are likely to remain in place after the crisis and even when a vaccine is finally found, simply because employers don't have any incentive to remove a surveillance system once it's been installed, particularly if one of the indirect benefits of surveillance is to check on employees' productivity. This is what happened after the terrorist attacks of 11th of September 2001. All around the world, new security measures like employing widespread cameras, requiring electronic ID cards, logging employees or visitors in and out became the norm. At that time, these measures were deemed extreme, but today they are used everywhere and considered normal. An increasing number of analysts, policymakers, and security specialists fear the same will now happen with the tech solutions put into place to contain the pandemic. They foresee a dystopian world ahead of us. The risk of dystopia. Now that information and communication technologies permeate almost every aspect of our lives and forms of social participation, any digital experience that we have can be turned into a plotter designed to monitor and anticipate our behavior. The risk of possible dystopia stemmed from this observation. Over the past few years, it has nourished countless works of art, ranging from novels like The Handmaid's Tale, the TV series Black Mirror. In academia, it finds its expression in the research undertaken by scholars like Shoshana Zuboff. Her book, Surveillance Capitalism, which I just so happen to have here, maybe I should read this on stream at some point. Maybe after reading Imperialism. Lenin's Imperialism, the Highest State of Capitalism. Sounds like a good idea. Her book, Surveillance Capitalism, warns about customers being reinvented as data sources, with surveillance capitalism transforming our economy, politics, society, and our own lives by producing deeply anti-democratic asymmetries of knowledge and the power that accrues knowledge. I should read that book after Lenin's Imperialism. Why is he citing her? Is she not a Marxist? And for anyone who's screaming in the background watching this at any point in future saying, Klaus Schwab is a Marxist. No, he's fucking. He's no, he's not. He is most definitely. And, well, actually, I should point this out, right? You can be a Marxist without being a communist. I should point that out. You can be a Marxist in the sense of acknowledging the accuracy of Marx's critique of political economy without bringing with that the practical uh, outcome of that critique or the practical steps that were deemed a solution to that critique. You can be a Marxist without being a communist. In fact, those members of the bourgeoisie who are Marxists in the sense of having read Marx's critique and understood it are perhaps the most dangerous among them. Because they're not like Elon Musk, where they go around playing all funsies, worshipping technology and throwing Romans at presidential inauguration. The ones who understand Marx are the ones who zip the lip. They are the ones that zip the lip. They shut up. But occasionally, you will have something still. Like when Warren Buffett said, they are waging class war and winning because they are dividing us. They are dividing the working class against itself to hold on to power. The culture war is a scam. Let's continue. Over the coming months and years, the trade-off between public health benefits and loss of privacy will be carefully weighed, becoming the topic of many animated conversations and heated debates. Most people, fearful of the danger posed by COVID-19, will ask, isn't it foolish not to leverage the power of technology to come to our rescue when we are victims of an outbreak and facing a life or death kind of situation? They will then be willing to give up a lot of privacy and will agree that in such circumstances, public power can rightfully override individual rights. Then, when the crisis is over, some may realize that their country has suddenly been transformed into a place where they no longer wish to live. This sounds like a lot of people on Twitter. A lot of people. This thought process is nothing new. Over the last few years, both governments and firms have been using increasingly sophisticated technologies to monitor and sometimes manipulate citizens and employees. If we are not vigilant, warn the privacy advocates, the pandemic will mark an important watershed in the history of surveillance. The argument put forward by those who, above all, fear the grip of technology on personal freedom is plain and simple. In the name of public health, some elements of personal privacy will be abandoned for the benefit of containing an epidemic. Just as the terrorist attacks of 9/11 prevent greater and permanent security in the name of protecting public safety. Then, without realizing it, we will fall victims of new surveillance powers that will never recede and that could be repurposed for their political means or more sinister ends. As the last few pages have exposed beyond a reasonable doubt, the pandemic could open an era of public health, of active health surveillance made possible by location detecting smartphones, facial recognition cameras, and other technologies that identify sources of infection and track the spread of a disease in quasi-real time. Despite all the precautions certain countries take to control the power of tech and limit surveillance, others are not so concerned. Some thinkers worry about how some of the quick choices we make today will influence our societies for years to come. The historian Yuval Noah Harari is one of them. In a recent article, he argues that we'll have a fundamental choice to make between totalitarian surveillance and citizen empowerment. It's worth exposing his argument in detail. Surveillance technology developing at breakneck speed. And what seemed science fiction 10 years ago is today old news. As a thought experiment, consider a hypothetical government that demands that every citizen wears a biometric bracelet that monitors body temperature and heart rate 24 hours a day. The resulting data is sorted and analyzed by government algorithms. The algorithms will know that you are sick even before you know it, and they will also know where you have been and who you have met. The chains of infection could be drastically shortened and even cut altogether. Such a system could arguably stop the epidemic in its tracks within days. Sounds wonderful, right? The downside is, of course, that this would give legitimacy to a terrifying new surveillance system. If you know, for example, that I clicked on a Fox News link rather than a CNN link, that can teach you something about my political views and perhaps even my personality. But if you can monitor what happens to my body temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate as I watch the video clip, you can learn what makes me laugh, what makes me cry, and what makes me really, really angry. It is crucial to remember that anger, joy, boredom, and love are biological phenomena, just like fever and a cough. The same technology that identifies coughs would also identify laughs. If corporations and governments start harvesting our biometric data en masse, they can get to know us far better than we know ourselves. And they can then not just predict our feelings, but also manipulate our feelings and sell us anything they want, be it a product or a politician. Biometric monitoring would make Cambridge Analytica's data hacking tactics look like something from the Stone Age. Imagine North Korea in 2030, where every citizen has to wear a biometric bracelet 24 hours a day. If you listen to a speech by the great leader and the bracelet picks up the telltale signs of anger, you are done for it. We will have been there. Is in fact the book itself. Some social commentators, like Evgeny Morozov, go even further, convinced that the pandemic heralds a dark future of techno-totalitarian state surveillance. His argument, premised upon the concept of technological solutionism explored in a book written in 2012, posits that the tech solutions offered to contain the pandemic will necessarily take the surveillance state to the next level. He sees evidence of this in two distinct strands of absolutism or of solutionism in government responses to the pandemic that he has identified. On the one hand, there are progressive solutionists who believe that the appropriate exposure to an app for the right information about infection could make people behave in the public interest. On the other hand, there are punitive solutionists determined to use the vast digital surveillance infrastructure to curb our daily activities and punish any transgression. What Morozov perceives as the greatest and ultimate danger to our political systems and liberties is that the successful example of tech in monitoring and containing the pandemic will then entrench the solutionist toolkit as the default option for addressing all other existential problems, from inequality to climate change. After all, it is much easier to deploy solutionist tech to influence individual behavior, then it is to ask difficult political questions about the root causes of these crises. Spinoza, the 17th century philosopher who resisted oppressive authority all his life, famously said, "Fear cannot be without hope, nor hope without fear." This is a good guiding principle to conclude this chapter, along with the thought that nothing is inevitable, that we must be symmetrically aware of both good and bad outcomes. Dystopian scenarios are not for fatality. It is true that in the post-pandemic era, personal health and well-being will become a much greater priority for society, which is why the genie of tech surveillance will not be put back into the bottle. But it is for those who govern, and each of us personally, to control and harness the benefits of technology without sacrificing our individual and collective values and freedoms. That is in chapter 1, COVID-19's the greatest. Next week, I will begin reading chapter 2, Micro Reset Industry. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. That is for me. That last chapter, especially, was quite the kicker, if I do say so much. Very much quite the kicker in terms of analyzing the possibilities that lay before us with regard to surveillance. Um, that one was certainly more enlightening than what's been in there so far. So, to be fair, you kind of left off chapter 1 on a bit of a bang but yeah, surveillance and tracking and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, so I think I might read Shannon Zipol's book on the dreams after I'm finished reading um, Vladimir Lenin's Imperialism, High-Tech Capitalism, which I will start reading after I'm finished with it. Uh, that'll be very. I genuinely fear reading Shoshana Zuboff's book because I feel like it will be so revealing that it will be quite. Um, I have seen a documentary she did, um, and yeah, it is frankly, it will be very revealing, I think, to read that book on the screens. That is certainly one of those books that I think would be good to read publicly. So yeah, so I think that might be where I'll sit for now on that. Finish off COVID-19 The Great Reset. Then I'll read Vladimir Lenin's Imperialism, High State Capitalism. And then I will read Shoshana Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance. And in the meantime, in private, I will be working on a theology building up, a new theological analysis of the Bible for the 21st century. So I will come out with more information on that future. But the inaugural step in this plan will be an analysis of the book of Revelation. And a lot of my um, findings will probably be put on or analysis will very likely be put on the Vanguard guidance on my set. I am also considering upgrading to X Premium Plus in order to unlock articles on X, and then the Vanguard Digest would be published there as well. So, yeah. Um, we will really have to see how this will go. If it's going to be a fun ride, that's for certain. But yeah, uh, for now, I will be back on Thursday for the gaming stream in the uniform next time. I've been drinking all day, so I just pick off his stuff. Putting the uniform on for this one. I might play AIQ this. I might try that because I don't think the laptop is handling the. I don't think the laptop's handling the heat very well at the moment. We're coming back to summer in October, so if I can get the aircon on, that'll help. That'll help, I think. So yeah, I may look at that. But yeah. So that'll be it for tonight's reading stream. Bit shorter. Just wanted to smash out that last bit of chapter one. I will see you guys on Thursday for the gaming stream, or next Tuesday where I will start reading chapter two. I'll see you guys